Thank you. I bought it for myself as a post-election gift. All righty.
All right, before we go. All right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I call this to order this first meeting of the NCUA board in 2025. In addition to those joining us in the boardroom, I note for the record that today's meeting is open to the public through a live webcast. Before we begin our formal agenda, I want to address a topic that has captured the national attention for more than a week: the horrific wildfires in Los Angeles. During the last 9 days, more than 40,000 acres have burned, an estimated 13,000 structures have been damaged or destroyed, and dozens of people are reported dead or missing. Moreover, tens of thousands have found themselves homeless, including at least one NCUA examiner. Fortunately, all of the NCUA team members stationed in Los Angeles County remain physically safe. We hope that continues to be true in the days ahead. The Santa Ana winds will likely change many more times and lead to more damage before the wildfires are fully contained. That's why the NCUA is closely monitoring the impact of the wildfires on the credit unions we regulate and insure. Currently, we know of 58 credit union facilities belonging to 38 credit unions located within 5 miles of the Palisades, Eaton, and Hearst wildfires. 2 federal credit unions were initially evacuated to the fires, but the order has since been lifted. All credit union buildings are currently safe, but some branches are closed due to power outages or poor air quality. We are also already have plans in place to facilitate recovery efforts. The NCUA and other financial regulators, for example, fully recognize the serious impact of the California wildfires. We have issued guidance encouraging financial institutions operating in the affected areas to work with their members to meet the community's needs. That includes constructively working with borrowers to adjust or alter the terms of loans and permitting the use of temporary facilities for conducting business, among other things. Next week, the NCUA staff will also receive training on helping credit unions manage their loan portfolios that may be adversely affected by the fires. Separately, the NCUA has issued 2 letters to credit unions since the board met last month. The first letter outlined the agency's 2025 supervisory priorities. The NCUA will continue to focus on rising and continuing challenges within the credit union system. Those risks include liquidity, interest rate, credit, and compliance risk, as well as the omnipresent cybersecurity risk. By emphasizing these areas, the NCUA is acknowledging the ongoing concerns with loan performance, delinquency rates, and charge-offs we are seeing at credit unions. Indeed, the rising interest rate environment put pressure on credit union earnings in 2023 and 2024. And the recent lowering of interest rates, higher yielding loans and investments are prone to prepayment, which could accelerate rate drops, reducing interest income for longer duration assets. As such, NCUA examiners will analyze a credit union's current and prospective sources of earnings and liquidity, as well as the composition of its net worth to better understand potential concentration risks and liquidity positions. Our second letter to credit unions announced the availability of a new cyber incident reporting web form. We encourage all credit unions to familiarize themselves with both letters. With that, I'll pause here first to recognize the Vice Chairman for any observations he may have. I know that California was once home to him.
You bet. Other than D.C. for 12 years, Los Angeles for 9 is the place I've lived most of my life. As a high school student in the Northeast, I picked colleges, this is how scientific I was back then, that were good schools and warm places. Well, depending on how you define good and how you define warm. Anyway, I wound up at UCLA, having never been out west in my life. And I vividly remember my first winter there. And winter in Los Angeles is kind of like October in D.C., temperate. And I remember getting up in the morning and hearing a howling wind, right? And I said, all right, let me, bundle up a little bit, put another fleece on, I hear that wind, it made it cold. And I walked out and got blasted by heat because we didn't have those on the East Coast. Santa Ana wind, the Canadians call them the Canuck. They have them in Alberta too. That blasting wind that is hot and dry, that was different than every other thing in my life. Windy is usually colder, all else equal. And I remember just getting blasted by that wind. And that is what is happening now. And I think I've just been some recent good news the last couple of days, I think. But the wind, somewhat unique to the west of this continent. Number one, it spreads the fire because it only happens when it's hot and dry. Number two, it makes it harder for the planes at times to drop water over them. As a regulator in the United States, man, we get them all, don't we? Our Canadian friends, in terms of natural disasters, et cetera, our Canadian friends, their credit union system, well, at least they don't have hurricanes. Our British friends are not on a fault line. They don't have earthquakes. In this varied, incredible country we have, we get them all. And so credit unions are going to keep doing what they do. Chairman mentioned what NCUA is doing in monitoring, but credit unions themselves are the front line. They're going to do what they've done, whether they, NCUA doesn't need to tell them. People helping people. We've seen this before. We saw this in Guam. We saw it in North Carolina with the flooding. That was even more bizarre. That was a mountain flooding. Do you ever hear that? Almost never happens. And I remember DC, now we're relatively immune in this region from natural disasters, but this is a very DC form of a disaster. We have government shutdowns. That's our version of that. And I remember when I worked on the Hill, the credit union group saying they gained members and were a huge boon. That's why they gained members. Why? Because they fronted government employee paychecks, federal employees, fronted it. That's an interest-free loan. When they keep your direct deposit going, even though your employer is not paying you, that's an interest-free loan. That was a godsend. And I know credit unions are doing those things today out in California. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board Member Otska.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo my colleagues' comments. I mean, we're all keeping Californians in our minds as these devastating fires continue. Glad to hear that our staff are all safe and thank them for their work to ensure that credit unions and their members have the resources they need and that credit unions are, they are doing what they need to do to make sure that their members have the things that they need to get through this situation. Also want to thank the Western Region, Human Resources, our security management team, and the Office of Consumer Financial Protection that have been working, and I know many other NCUA staff that have been working with the California State Credit Union Regulator, with credit unions. So I just want to thank everybody. I know it's been a really tough week and a half, especially for those who are directly impacted by the fires. So just want to say thank you, and we're keeping them in our minds.
No, absolutely. And we will continue to do whatever we need to do. I know that our new regional director in the Western region, Julie Case, as well as the rest of her team, are on top of this. And we will also, I should make a point that we do have urgent needs grants available through the Community Development Revolving Loan Fund. We also have loans that are available through the Community Development Loan Fund that our Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion can be able to help and provide support. So we encourage credit unions to use those resources if needed. Now, let's turn to our agenda. The sole item scheduled today is the NCUA 2025 Annual Performance Plan. Staff presenting the item are Melissa Loudon, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, and Jim Holm, Supervisory Budget Analyst, Office of the Chief Financial Officer. Good morning, Melissa and Jim. Jim, this is what, your 67th time here at the board table?
I just love coming back.
Absolutely. Jim, Melissa, please begin whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman Harper, Vice Chairman Hoffman, and Board Member Otska. Jim and I are here to discuss the NCUA's 2025 Annual Performance Plan and request the board's approval of the plan. The annual performance plan is important because it demonstrates to our agency's employees and stakeholders the specific work the NCUA will do over the next year to fulfill its mission and make progress toward achieving its goals. In conjunction with the multi-year strategic plan and the annual budget, we hold ourselves accountable for delivering results to credit union member owners and to the general public. The 2022 to 2026 strategic plan is the foundational document that charts the course for the agency's actions and goals. The annual performance plan provides greater specificity around the metrics and milestones the NCUA will monitor throughout this year to track our efforts to achieve the vision of the strategic plan. In our effort to further integrate planning with budgeting, we worked with offices to develop initial performance metrics concurrently with the 2025 budget. NCUA offices were required to justify how funding and staffing for new and ongoing projects would help the agency achieve its strategic goals and objectives. As part of the budget process, we also asked offices to identify the specific performance indicators that demonstrate the results of the budget's investments. This annual performance plan, in combination with the budget, shows how the NCUA will execute on our strategic plan in 2025. Jim's team, consisting of Lindsay Courage, an OCFO management analyst, and Aaron Spinos, a credit union examiner in the Southern region on detail to OCFO, collaborated with senior executives and staff across the agency to develop this plan. The contributions from this outreach were constructive and insightful. We are very much appreciative of the partnership with our NCUA colleagues. I would now like to turn to Jim, who will discuss the specific contents of the plan.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning, board members. As Melissa explained, the annual performance plan gives the public an accounting of progress made carrying out the NCUA's strategic plan and provides detailed information about our programs and measurable performance targets and milestones for each of our strategic goals. The annual performance plan also provides a catalog of the activities and other actions that the NCUA expects to carry out to reach its strategic goals and explains how the agency will gauge progress in relevant areas of operations. Some of the important indicators in the 25 performance plan before you today include measures that show, first of all, how the NCUA addresses undue risk and other violations at federally insured credit unions, which is the focus of the agency's first strategic goal. These performance targets include tracking the timeliness of our examinations and follow-up examinations, identifying and analyzing barriers to credit unions' adoption of emerging technology, conducting fair lending examinations and resolving complaints received by our Consumer Assistance Center, and achieving positive responses to our post-examination surveys. The second area of our indicators measure what the NCUA is doing to strengthen communities' financial well-being, which is the focus of our second strategic goal. These performance targets include identifying opportunities to expand the availability of financial services in historically overlooked areas while providing assistance and expertise to small and MDI-designated credit unions. And then third of all, we measure how the agency's administrative and managerial staff plan to deliver best-in-class financial management, information technology services, and human capital management to the NCUA, which is our third strategic goal. The CFO's office, where Melissa and I both work, is responsible for measuring and reporting on the progress, implementing the actions that the NCUA offices take to meet the agency's performance targets. We work collaboratively with the NCUA's program managers to collect quarterly results during the year. These results are provided to the public at the year end as part of our annual report. And although today we are discussing the 2025 plan, the plan for this year to monitor performance, we will be publishing the annual report for 2024 this coming March, which will include a line-by-line update showing the agency's results for each of the performance measures set for last year. The annual report will also explain the underlying cause of any variance from our targets or change in performance trends over the past 12 months as appropriate. The most current and recent annual performance plans and annual reports, as well as the NCUA's strategic plan, its budgets, and our financial statements can all be found on the ncua.gov website. So thank you for your time today. That concludes our presentation about the 2025 annual performance plan, and we're happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Jim and Melissa, for your presentation on the NCUA's 2025 annual performance plan. And thank you to the entire team in the Office of the Chief Financial Officer for your diligent and collaborative efforts working across the agency in preparing this plan for the board's consideration today. Moreover, I was pleased to work with Board Member Otska to add a provision that will ensure that the updated Minority Depository Institution Preservation Program approved in early 2024 will be included as a metric in this plan. I thank the Vice Chairman for supporting that sensible addition. As I have often said, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. I know the vice chairman says a variation of that very same
What
phrase.
gets measured gets done.
It gets done. That's what makes the NCUA's 2025 Annual Performance Plan so important. This plan includes specific measures and targets in support of the agency's mission and the goals as outlined in the 2022 to 2026 strategic plan. It describes the means, strategies, and specific actions the NCUA will undertake in 2025 to achieve each strategic objective. It also outlines how the agency will measure its performance and continue to effectively supervise and ensure a growing and evolving credit union system. In 2025, the NCUA will continue to address consumer financial protection hand in glove with safety and soundness. Credit union members deserve no less. Consumer financial protection is not only a core part of the NCUA's mission, but the agency is also statutorily required to supervise and enforce compliance with federal consumer financial protection laws. And consumer financial protection is specifically included in the agency's strategic vision, which is outlined in the strategic plan. That's why I'm pleased that this plan includes a metric requiring the board to adopt a framework to begin implementation of an enhanced consumer compliance program for complex credit unions. This plan also charges the NCUA team with enhancing consumer access to safe, fair, and affordable financial products and services, a critical mission of this agency. This work includes meeting the needs of underserved communities, ensuring the agency has the expertise to understand the extension of credit related to artificial intelligence and climate events, providing resources to aid small credit unions and minority depository institutions, and supporting the development of new federal credit unions, including the formation of more minority depository institutions. With credit unions growing in asset size and operational complexity, there are two other matters worth mentioning here. First, this plan notes that the board will begin working on reassessing the methodology used to establish the normal operating level for the Share Insurance Fund to respond to those industries' changes. In my view, it's better to set aside sufficient reserves in good economic environments than it is to charge the Share Insurance Fund premiums to credit unions during economic downturns. Second, this plan discusses the need for the agency to continue its efforts to enhance the enterprise risk management practices of the largest credit unions. We especially need to ensure the orderly resolution of large institutions with the board adoption, as appropriate, and agency implementation of new procedures, processes, and protections in the years ahead. I know that's something that the Enterprise Risk Council is working very diligently on. In the spirit of transparency and accountability, the results of our annual performance plan measures are reported each year in the NCUA's annual report, as Jim noted. Additionally, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer provides quarterly updates to the NCUA board and offices, which we use to track progress and, if necessary, take appropriate actions to maintain or achieve our objectives. In closing, while this plan provides the NCUA with a roadmap for measuring its performance, it is the dedication, professionalism, and hard work of our NCUA team that will allow us to exceed as an agency in 2025. I am proud to serve alongside each one of you, and I know that together we will fulfill our goals, continue to protect credit union members and the system of cooperative credit, and strengthen our nation's economic well-being, especially for those of modest means. That concludes my remarks on the performance plan. Vice Chairman Holtman.
Yes, sir, and thanks, Jim, Melissa, for your presentation. I want to congratulate everybody that worked on this 2025 annual performance plan. The document sets NCUA's 2025 priorities to support our mission of protecting the system of cooperative credit and its member owners. The plan also supports the agency's vision to strengthen communities and protect consumers by ensuring financial inclusion. Those are impressive ideals and are pursued through the agency's overarching goals too. 1, ensure a safe, sound, and viable system. 2, improve the financial well-being of individuals and their communities. 3, maximize the NCUA's organizational performance. Our continued focus on quantifiable outputs and outcomes is yielding positive results. As Chairman said, what gets measured gets done. That means it's important to measure the right things. If any of you are familiar with the history of the Soviet Union, they would tell a factory, a government-run factory, you gotta make 10,000 pairs of shoes. All right, They made 10,000 pairs of little children's shoes because they are easier and cheaper to make. Now, if your reaction to that is, oh, the government bureaucrat should have told the government factory to spread out the sizes to better fit, well, then history is probably very perplexing to you. The point is government shouldn't be doing that in the first place, and it is much more effective not to. If you think the answer to that is government should have done better planning and issued directives on this, then you probably wonder why nobody in Miami gets on a raft to get to Cuba. Performance indicators we have, such as 1.22 regarding the post-examination survey, communicates the board's and management's expectations. This performance indicator tells NCUA staff and credit unions that the agency values collaboration, the narrative, and timely delivery of examination reports. Staff achieved a 94% positive rating from credit unions on our goal of 90%. This was in a year with new and difficult challenges for credit unions and examiners. And as with all customer service surveys, much of the value comes from the questions, not just the answers. And then as a fact, NCUA does a survey in the first place. In this era, where we constantly give and get feedback via our phones and computers, people notice when government agencies' only mechanism for feedback is a very poorly advertised ombudsman. Those agencies aren't taking the basic modern steps to ensure quality control, so I'm appreciative of that aspect of today's plan. One more note on transparency. Credit unions that have the opportunity to record their exit meeting, not while they're examined as a place for private meetings, strictly the exit meeting, which is usually 20 minutes to an hour, or a joint conference if you do it with that, should do so. That's all federal credit unions and then various states. I couldn't actually tell you exactly which states allow it and not. But the credit unions that have that opportunity and decide not to do it are handicapping themselves. It's not about bad behavior or a testy examiner. That could occasionally be a benefit. Recording just provides value information for new management, new examiners, plus transcripts are automated these days. This isn't the 1980s where you have to set up a VHS recorder, and then both parties get a copy, so you have to copy the VHS and send it. This is all super easy now. I assure any credit union out there that a transcript of your exit meeting will be at least as valuable as the thousands of documents you've got saved on your various computers or in the cloud. These recordings and transcripts can be a godsend for examiners as well. We've had situations, and I know if a credit union called me and said, Examiner Kyle, you were here 5 months ago, we got a little internal disagreement. I think you meant we're supposed to do this thing this way. And my colleague is sitting here saying they think that the way we resolve it is this other way. Well, I know what I would say, and this is probably like 11 exams later, that they're calling you and you've talked to other credit unions. I would say, well, can you tell me what I said? Because that would help me answer this question. It's the era we live in. It's a godsend. Back to the specifics of what we're voting on. The 2025 plan is substantially similar to last year's. There's a few performance indicators of note around supporting the viability of credit unions. We don't expect, big, hairy, audacious goals in most government plans, but growing the number of members in MDI designated credit unions by 20% over last year's level, that's notable. Conducting small credit union MDI assistance support for 100% of all participating credit unions is also notable. Just as a reminder, if your credit union is 100 million or less in assets, or you're an MDI of any size, you can request special assistance outside of exam hours. You may either request training from your examiner or through the regional office. We've also done this kind of training or assistance in a roundtable format, so there's multiple credit unions, if that makes it easier. I urge you to ask for help when you need it. And it is my understanding, I think my colleagues can chime in and you guys can, this is real assistance and it isn't held against you in your exam. It's not supposed to be, and I believe it is working that way. Sometimes regulators don't realize, most people don't say, oh, wait, I get more time with my regulator? Boy, I'm psyched. Let me take advantage of that. That's not how normal people are. Right? More NCUA time? Sign me up. You have to realize that I do believe it is working. It's not held against you. It reminds me of the teachers I had where if you had your act together and you submitted your paper early as a draft, they could mark it up. You could make all kinds of mistakes. You were solely judged on the end product. And as a matter of fact, asking for help in these things could benefit you, okay? I think that is the case today. So I'm encouraging credit unions to take advantage of this. We've budgeted. You credit unions are paying for it, and it can be quite useful. That concludes my remarks, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Hopman. Board Member Otska, you're recognized now.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim and Melissa, for the presentation. Thanks, everybody who worked on the performance plan. I think it's an important tool towards achieving our mission, and it's simply good government. And, our job is to make sure that credit unions serve their members, and we provide something that's really important, which is deposit insurance or share insurance. Because when things go badly, we are there to make sure that members can continue to have their funds. And deposit insurance is a wonderful thing, and something that I think government serves the public really well. The 2025 performance plan, I just want to, talk about a couple of things. It reiterates our commitment to building our consumer compliance program, ensuring it's on an equal footing with safety and soundness. We once again have a goal of completing 60 fair lending exams in 2026. Last year, our fair lending team actually surpassed that goal and completed 64, so that's great. Unfortunately, lending discrimination is still a problem today. I think we all wish that it was something in the past, but unfortunately, it still happens. And, in many cases, borrowers might not even know that they're being treated differently than others with similar credit profiles. And in some cases, credit unions themselves, particularly small credit unions, they might not know that they are violating fair lending laws either. Credit unions might be relying on third-party programs or applications to help make lending decisions, but that might actually be causing them to run afoul of the law. And so, I think the goal here is to make sure that we are doing these examinations. That's why it's important. NCUA's fair lending exams can help ensure credit unions are treating all their members fairly. It can also help credit unions identify compliance gaps before they balloon out of control and work with us to remediate them. Some of the cases, for example, the NCUA identified in 2024 involved discrimination based on age and marital status and redlining of Black and Hispanic communities. Who you are or where you live shouldn't dictate whether you can get a loan. Ultimately, the NCUA's goal is to help credit unions fulfill that mission of providing financial access to those who need it most. The annual performance plan reflects the NCUA's commitment to adopting a framework for an enhanced consumer compliance program for complex credit unions. While we've made significant strides in our fair lending exams, we also need to make sure that credit union members are being treated fairly when using a credit card, for example, or engaging in electronic payments, because that is so ubiquitous. These are some of the issues that I think we should address under the compliance framework, and I look forward to working with my fellow board members on its implementation. Finally, this year's performance plan once again includes metrics related to strengthening the minority depository institutions, or MDIs, in our credit union system. I'm pleased to see us commit to operationalizing this plan in 2025, and I thank my fellow board members for their support in adding this as a metric to the performance plan this year. The NCUA should continue to support the growth of MDIs. Nearly 500 MDI credit unions served more than 6.5 million members in 2023, a significant increase from 5 million members in 2022. This is about a 26% increase in membership, and it's a good sign that we are seeing more credit unions designate as MDIs. During the same time, total loans outstanding among MDI credit unions grew by more than 40%. Commercial and business lending increased by almost $1 billion. So our preservation plan should propel this positive growth, which has been trending upwards even further, and build a framework that identifies struggling MDIs earlier on. So that way we can help outline creative solutions to preserve MDI status before it's too late. So for some institutions, a merger might be the right decision to ensure long-term viability. But ideally, that should be a decision that the board and the membership of the institution make among a range of options, not because it's the only one left. And I think too often we find ourselves in that situation. MDIs, and frankly, a lot of small credit unions. So I look forward to working with my fellow board members and NCUA staff to achieve these and the other goals in the performance plan. Thanks again, everyone, for their work on it. Thank you to my fellow board members, and I turn it back to you, Chair Harper.
Thank you so much. And building on what you said about minority depository institutions, first, I couldn't agree more with you. But also, too, earlier this week, I was meeting with our Office of the Chief Economist, who has recently done some work looking at MDIs and net interest margins. And one of the startling, or I should say positive aspects that I saw is that 4 MDIs that are low-income credit unions, which is about 80% of MDIs, they actually have higher net interest margins and are performing well, which shows that a minority depository institution focusing on a niche market can really help a community to thrive and do better. I do have just one question for everybody, and it sort of builds on. I know this annual performance plan gets adopted, we do it, but what's next? It's going to be a new administration coming here very shortly. When's the next strategic plan going to be developed?
Yeah, good question. I can take that one. So the Government Performance and Results Act, commonly known as GIPRA Modernization Act of 2010, aligned the strategic planning process with the beginning of each new term of an administration. So every federal agency must produce a new strategic plan by the first Monday in February in the year following an administration's inauguration. So that concludes my response.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. And I guess we have some of our work, or you have your work cut out for you. I remember the last process that we went through. And I look forward to engaging with all of my board members as well as the entire agency on that. Vice Chairman Hauptman, is there a motion?
Yes, sir, there is a motion. And I'm actually going to read it, too. I move that the board approve the 2025 NCUA Annual Performance Plan as attached to the Board Action Memorandum.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a sufficient second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and let the record show that the motion passed 3-0. Before we conclude, I would like to close this board meeting with a few personal remarks. On Monday, we will, of course, swear in a new president. Consistent with the Federal Credit Union Act, the new president will select a new NCUA chairman. Before that transition takes place, I want to express my deepest thanks to all the NCUA employees for all that we achieved together during these last 4 years. Serving as the 12th NCUA chairman has been one of the greatest honors of my life. Leading the many talented and dedicated professionals of this agency is something I will long remember and cherish. Together, we accomplished much and overcame unprecedented challenges like the COVID-19 pandemic and the 2023 liquidity crisis. Together, we made the credit union system safer and more resilient. We increased fairness and protections for credit union members, and we advanced equity to ensure the credit union system worked better for all Americans, especially those of modest means. And together during these last 4 years, we implemented the risk-based capital rule and created a simplified option to measure capital adequacy for complex credit unions with more than $500 million in assets. We aligned our ratings with those of the federal banking agencies and a majority of state regulators by adding the S sensitivity component to the CAMELS rating system, and we enhanced the capacity of the central liquidity facility. Further, we made considerable strides in addressing cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Namely, the NCUA strengthened our supervisory program with the implementation of the risk-focused information security examination, and we also finalized the cyber incident reporting rule, including with the new web-based platform that I mentioned earlier today. Additionally, the NCUA enhanced our consumer financial protection program to better ensure that consumers receive the same supervisory protections regardless of their financial services provider of choice. We grew our fair lending program by increasing the number of examiners and by referring to the Justice Department instances of racial redlining as well as age and marital discrimination. And we focused on problematic overdraft practices like authorizing positive and settling negative, as well as multiple representments. Additionally, we mandated that federally insured credit unions with more than $1 billion in assets separately disclose income from overdraft and non-sufficient fund fees to better provide transparency for members and allow for better benchmarking by credit unions. And we created new consumer compliance positions within the regions. Moreover, I'm especially proud of the progress we've made in advancing diversity, equity, and economic inclusion within the credit union system. That's important work because the statutory mission of the credit union system is to meet the credit and savings needs of members, especially those of modest means, and because the country's demographics continue to evolve. Moreover, our efforts to build a culture of belonging and respect ultimately led the NCUA to once again being recognized as a best place to work in the federal government by the Partnership for Public Service in 2023, and I'm hoping for 2024. Of course, none of these accomplishments would have been possible without the talented and dedicated NCUA team. Every one of you has made an important and meaningful contribution to the agency's successes these last 4 years, for which I cannot thank you enough. And let me pause here just to say thank you to 4 people in particular. The first is to my Chief of Staff, Catherine Galicia. She has led the agency, and I mean, she was the engine that kept things running when I was literally in the hospital bed in Gurney last year, recovering from double disc replacement surgery. I also want to thank Elizabeth Yergubian for ably leading our Office of Communications and External Affairs. You've done an outstanding job. Sam Schumack, who has been the deputy director of that office, has also done great work. And lastly, the confidential assistant to the chairman, Jean Carroll, has always been there to help make sure that the scheduling and changes get done in just a seamless way and keep me on track and actually be nice about it every single time. That's so important going through. And while I will occupy a different seat at the board table in February, I will continue to advance important priorities for credit union members, the system, and the agency. I also look forward to continuing to work with all of you at the agency and my board colleagues, including our new chairman, who will successfully lead the NCUA in his own unique way on these many endeavors, including those outlined in the annual performance plan unanimously approved today. So as always, be safe, be well, be kind. Thank you for all that you accomplished and all your support. It has meant and continues to mean the world to me. I am eager for what 2025 will bring the NCUA team, credit union members, and the credit union system. Thank you all. Let me pause here to recognize my fellow board members. Vice Chairman Hauptman.
You thanked a lot of people. I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank the people who you've thanked. They've done a good job too. We're going to have more or less the same employees next week as we had this week, and they're going to continue doing a great job. As these sort of boards and commissions go, I think it is a good thing. Maybe it's a credit to us. Maybe it's because of credit unions. It is not as partisan as these things often are. I could point you to, well, many other regulators, some of which in the financial space, that are the RD difference is more glaring. We have a lot more meetings that are like this one where we work together and cut a deal. So I don't know if it's because of us or it's because of credit union world, but I think all else equal, it is good that we are not at one of those agencies where it's that that partisan, I would say. Okay, and I think we're going to continue in that spirit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board Member Otska.
Yes, thank you, Chair Harper, for your leadership of the agency through some really tough times where there's a lot of uncertainty. So I just want to thank you for your leadership, for your public service. I believe you're the first career staffer to be on the board.
On the board, yes.
Yeah, so it's you did a great job, and I appreciate it. And I also want to thank the vice chairman for his, welcoming me on the board, working together. I hope to continue that, in the coming months, coming years. And really just, again, I think we have the NCUA's mission in mind, and thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to working with both of you following the transition.
And thank you so much, both of you. I do appreciate those words. I really took to heart the lessons I learned from my mom and dad, and my first congressional hearing for the partial term when I was nominated by then President Donald Trump. I talked about the fact that my mom was the labor union negotiator. My dad was the superintendent of schools. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican. And before they fell in love and got married, they negotiated deals across the table. And I always saw that you can find win-win solutions if you take the time to listen to each other. And I have no doubt that we will continue to do that. And just on one last personal note, I do want to thank my partner of 30-plus years, Thomas Spears. You've always believed in me, and Thank you for supporting me in doing all of this. That is the end of our agenda today. There being no further business, we are hereby adjourned.